This episode first aired on our new channel, Leaders in Tech and E-commerce podcast. It covers supply chain tech in depth. We do hope you enjoy it and feel free to follow our other podcast as well for the latest episodes.
I'm very happy to have today Antonio Boccalandro, the president of Asia Pacific for Blue Yonder. In his role, Antonio oversees Blue Yonder's operations in APAC and is responsible for the continued growth in the region through customer, partner, and associate engagement. Antonio has more than 20 years of global supply chain experience, including sales, implementation, consulting, and development of supply chain solutions. Prior to this role, Antonio served as the president of Latin America region, where he had responsibilities for sales operations throughout the region, including Mexico, Chile, and Brazil. Blue Yonder, formerly known as JDA Software, provides seamless, friction-free commerce, empowering every organization and person on the planet to fulfill their potential. Applying over 35 years of domain experience, contextual intelligence, and data science, Blue Yonder is helping more than 3,300 of the world's leading manufacturers, retailers, logistic companies create more autonomous, sustainable, and profitable operations. Blue Yonder has a team of 5,000 professionals and offices in 40 plus locations worldwide. Hi Antonio, great to have you with us today. We are living very difficult times. The COVID-19 situation is impacting businesses at a global level, and we are expecting a global economic recession this year. Supply chains are under a huge amount of stress. And as your company works with thousands of clients around the world, from manufacturers to logistic companies to retailers, wanted to get your take on the current situation and share some of the good case studies of how to face these kind of challenges. So let's go for the first question. What are some ripple effects and issues that propagate within supply chain networks at this moment? I think you have a great perspective on both APAC, Latin America, and global.
Thanks, Andre, and it's really good to be here. One of the first distinctions I wanted to make is it's we can't just use a broad brush and include all APAC in one bucket, right? In all regions. So as you look at the ripple effects, the first one that comes to mind is it really depends on the lead time that you have to the different markets, right? So if generally raw material, finished product, and so forth, it takes, 20, 30, 45 days to get there. The timing of the ripple effects might be different on the supply chains, right? So it's interesting to see that even though this humanitarian crisis happened in Asia, really a lot of the ripple effects didn't start hitting the larger markets of Europe and the US until 20, 30, or 40 days. Even today, scarcity tends to be around food and beverage, not so much about many other products, right? Because the lead time of some of that raw material and finished products takes long. If you look at this, from a point of view of inventory, it goes through the primary products is where we're seeing most of the ripple effects across the supply chain, not just in manufacturing, but also in retail.
Correct. That was my second question, because we see quite a lot of impact in inventory, and we see safety stocks being impacted, and it depends a bit on the geographic positioning of where the supply chains and where the distribution happens. Do you see any differences in the markets around the APAC or ASEAN, Southeast Asia? Is there any market that you see having more struggles with the current situation? How would you define it?
Yeah. Going back to the first question, you're right. Each market is slightly different. So the way I describe it in this new role that I've taken over, I have to admit that I'm getting a lot of calls from some of my counterparts and even some of my customers that I took care of, both in Latin America or the Americas, in mostly counterparts in Europe, because it did start here. So the way I've been defining it is you have, I think you can classify it in two broad waves. Wave one, which you saw China, Korea, and Japan, and wave two, pretty much all other countries, which maybe some minor distinctions, right? So in the case of wave one, we were all learning from that. We were all listening. And I do believe, and I think it's important to highlight this, is we are seeing positive news from these three markets, right? We're seeing positive trends. We're seeing people coming out. We're seeing travel bans domestically getting lifted. We're seeing companies. We actually have, I was in a conversation yesterday with our office in China, and they were telling me we have these 2 or 3 customers who are asking us to go to their offices and have these meetings. And some of these are actually mandating it to some extent. And again, we're seeing also positive trends in Korea and Japan. As you look at the other countries, they're a little bit earlier in that wave, and we're looking how things are doing. So when it comes specifically to inventory, no doubt safety stocks are getting depleted, depending on what the product is and the priority is, and governments and retailers are taking measures to try to protect and to share with the most immediate needs with their communities and the societies around these products.
I think you touched a bit on how you're helping the clients. Maybe you can delve a bit further on this. So how is your company helping the clients cope with the current situation? I know you have quite a broad offer of products when it comes to technology and supply chain. What are the most or the biggest questions, the biggest requests that you receive in this period?
Yes. So the traditional thinking about supply chain is you have two very big areas of supply chain. You have what most people would call planning, right? So creating a forecast, creating a procurement plan, those plannings tend to be, generally you would do it, once a day or once a week, right? And then there's another part of supply chain. We consider it all part of supply chain, but we call more execution, right? So the execution are like transportation plans and like warehouse plans that could change by the minute, right? So you might, prioritize certain orders, certain things, and those tend to be, as the word says, transactional execution-wise. So when it comes to what we're hearing from customers is most of our customers are saying we need to make sure that we are able to handle the increase in volumes. So we're very lucky to have some of the leading retailers in pretty much all major markets in the region. And we have proactively reached out to every single one of them. We have asked them, how can we help? And generally, the feedback we're getting is, look, our volumes are going up 200, 220, 250% to what we were doing at this same period of time last year. We need to make sure they're reliable, right? And one of the things, Andre, that I was very happy to share internally with the Blue Yonder team this week is one of those retailers who literally distributes what 50% of the country needs send us a very kind email saying systems are stable. We're going through peaks. We've never had this volume in the last 3 weeks ever. And we've been able to meet this demand in a seamless fashion.
That's an interesting example. I mean, 50%, that's a huge amount of the market. And what, in this case, in this particular retailer case, because I think it's a good example, what did they do to plan ahead or to be better prepared compared to others? Or what do you think are the main things that they did well and now they can reap the benefits?
Yeah. So some of the things have been learning curves for all of us. I mean, the truth is, this is, unprecedented. We have never gone through this. So, the traditional things about prioritizing orders and prioritizing certain products. But one of the key learnings that I think we all learn with this is, and this is true about a lot of the things we do, Andre, right? Which is, what are the things we're not going to do? They looked at where are we getting all the demand, and what are the categories where right now the demand is shrinking because it didn't increase across all. So fresh and vegetables was huge. Long-term products like spaghetti and kind products, but certain things like candies and liquors and seasonal things, those went down. So this specific retailer made I think a key decision of saying, you know what, we need to do less, and we're going to focus on the most important things in these categories, which are not critical for the well-being of our communities and our customers. We're just going to deprioritize those, right? So any orders, any forecast, any replenishment plans, just to put it mildly, we're going to ignore those and focus on other ones. So again, it's about what are we not going to do so that the things that we have to do, we can do better.
Got it. And strictly on the retail side, what do you think will happen in the next 3 months, let's say? Is there certain trends that you see? Are there some expectations from their side, and how are they preparing?
Yeah, I this is going to be really fascinating because I think we need to start with how our consumer behavior is going to change. A couple of the most interesting ones, and last week I had a meeting with one of our partners, and this executive was telling me that his mother, who's in Italy, okay, had placed her first online order through her cell phone. Okay, so somebody who had never ever placed an order online, grocery fresh, had done it because out of necessity. The question is, are these people who for the first time ever are changing their consumer behaviors, are they going to stay online? Or we're going to lose them all and we're going to go back? My guess is some of them are going to stay online, if not most, right? Another consumer behavior that's changing is the way we interact with payments. So, we've all been talking about RFID and contactless payment and all these things. Well, if you look at some of the statistics coming out of the three countries that I mentioned, China, Korea, and Japan, contactless payment has gone up by 30, 40%, right? So I think we're going to see a change in consumer behaviors. And I think the retail stores where we started this question are going to have to adapt to some of these changes. So if I were to guess right now, I would say we are going to see a lot more online. In specific, if you look at online behavior, Andre, I mean, traditionally, electronics has been number one in most countries, right? Apparel fashion has been generally number two. But when it comes to fresh and fruits and vegetables, it has been a very small 2, 3, 4% of everything that's online. There's a big chance that might actually go up significantly.
Interesting. I know another big topic in supply chains and when we talk about technology is visibility. And manufacturers, consumer goods companies, everybody has been struggling with having a clear visibility across their supply chains. Do you have some examples of good behaviors or good case studies in the specific topic of visibilities, and maybe some examples where people are or companies are struggling? How do you see it from your side, from your client's perspective?
Yeah. So visibility has always been, I think a key component and a best practice in good supply chains, right? Well-managed, good practices, and so forth. And it's also been a little bit challenging to some extent because of the globalization of the supply chains, right? I'm going to be a little unorthodox here and say that, interesting enough, the people who have the best visibility, in my opinion, based on, if you look at retail manufacturing, is really actually a third component, which is the third-party logistics companies, right? So, and if you think about it, I mean, to a very big extent, that is their business, right? They would argue one of their competitive differentiators, right? So you see most of them actually, huge increase, if they are able to operate, because obviously that is in what they're doing. Even myself, as a personal data point, we decided at Blue Yonder, in the case of the Singapore operation, I think what was like 10 days ago, we decided we were all going to work remote, okay? And not go to the office. Well, I'm receiving packages through different third-party logistics companies or packaging companies pretty much every day, right? In order to continue signing contracts and reviewing documents and so forth, right? So I think all retailers, all manufacturers, visibility is critical. If you were to ask me who's the one that's coping best with it and who has best practices, is the third-party logistics companies.
Got it. We interact with quite a few of the 3PLs around APAC globally, and I know this is what they need to focus, and a lot of their clients are asking about visibility. And because fragmentations and acquisitions, it's not an easy ask to figure out, to be honest. But I think, like you said, maybe from all that we see across the board, they are doing a great job at it. And we rely on their services even more during this time. Now, we talked just a bit about technology, and I know Blue Yonder made quite a lot of effort in the last few years. Even the name change suggested this, to focus on big data, machine learning, predictive supply chain. What can you tell us about this? How has this been impacting the current challenges? How does the latest tech help?
Yeah. So we had a customer of ours in the U.S. who actually sent our CEO, Mr. Girish Rishi, an email recently that uses some of our machine learning, artificial intelligence forecasting capabilities, what we call Luminate Demand Edge. Okay, and their feedback was very positive, and we're very proud. But he basically said, we went live a couple months ago, and we have been able to react much faster, much quicker to the changes in demand. So I don't think it's any secret. I mean, there's plenty of studies out there that are showing that really machine learning and artificial intelligence, is going to have a huge impact in supply chain management. And I think, if anything, this crisis we're going through has demonstrated that. So, the traditional forecasting solutions, no doubt, in the more mature markets where you have less variability of the products, work fine. But the business case for products that have high variability and also are perishable or have limited shelf life is very significant, Andre.
I agree. And you work across industries. I know that, for example, automotive has been hit very hard during the last few months. Do you have clients in that area who are doing better than the rest, or how do you see the automotive industry at the moment?
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were talking a little bit earlier, right? Yeah. You can't put everybody in the same bucket, right? So we are seeing, obviously, certain retailers, certain manufacturers, anything that has to do with medical supplies, safety products for medical personnel, food, beverage, that sort of thing. I mean, demand is outstripping supply at this moment in time. But on the other hand, you have a huge number of segments that it's completely the contrary. Automotive is one of them. Tourism is another one. Hotels, hospitality. I mean, we've seen the news across that. From that perspective, yes, we do. We actually, a large number of the manufactured cars are touched by a Blue Yonder solution in the world. We consider the automotive industry one of our key industries, and we work with European, Japanese, Asians, and American car manufacturers. And there is definitely not just about the actual manufacturing side of it. Do we have all the components? Do we have the raw materials? But actually, the problem for them right now is the demand has gone significantly down. Right? So it is going to be a challenge, and I think in their case, it's going to have to wait until the situation changes a little bit.
Definitely, everybody's shutting down a lot of factories. We saw BMW, I think Volkswagen, even in my home country of Romania, Dacia Renault had to shut down the factory. So that's at least one of the sectors where we see a lot of impact in the negative aspect. Now, I wanted to ask on a different topic, the partnerships, because there is a positive aspect of the situation where people, organizations, companies, even competitors come together to try to figure things out or to provide a better added value for the final client, or even to help their own workforce. We saw in Australia, Qantas, the airline, and Woolworth, the retailer, are working together to utilize the airline's workforce who is not active at the moment. Do you see other examples of good partnerships? Do you even yourself as a company, do you consider this, or do you have interesting partnerships that have been working during this period?
Yeah, I really got to see that example you just mentioned. I was not aware of it, and it brings me great happiness to see companies are helping each other really across the spectrum, right? An airline and a retailer, right? And in the case that you mentioned. And yes, I would say that in the midst of this crisis, you're seeing the best of people come together in many, many situations. So specifically when it comes to Blue Yonder, I think the first thing, the two or three things that I would highlight is, let's start with Microsoft. So in the case of Microsoft, Mr. Satya, the CEO of Microsoft, sent out a letter on March 22nd, which is published in LinkedIn and some other social media. And Blue Yonder specifically mentioned there because we are working together with Microsoft, with health organizations like CDC and some other ones to populate one of our tools that we call Luminate Control Tower with the latest information of the number of cases, number of hotspots, and so forth in reference to the coronavirus, right? Mm-hmm. And extrapolate that, put that above the specific company's network, supply chain network, and then you can look at, where is growth happening in reference to the virus, and how could that impact your supply chain, right? So we're making that available to some select customers. It is not a business-driven decision. It's about helping, right? So it's not the economic reward we're looking for. So that's a great example. We actually have some interesting slides, and we're putting supply chains, giving information and data and actionable intelligence to the customers, right? We're working with some of, we just had a call a couple of days ago with some of our system integrators and some of our partners, and they're suggesting that certain of our solutions, specifically about modeling fleets, modeling routes, multimodal. So when it comes to truck, ocean, BCs, cross docks, Andre, that sort of thing, they're saying, hey, can you give us a license? We have customers who need some help. They need some quick scenario planning, some quick execution advice, and we are making those available, right? So it's some of this initiatives coming from our partners, some of them coming from us, and some coming from our customers. So we have a very, very large retailer in the U.S. who has decided to make some interesting decisions about saying, well, I'm really struggling stocking every single one of my stores. Am I better off, continue to struggle doing this, or should I concentrate in certain stores and move my assets, my people, my inventory to the critical stores, right? So we're helping them go through that decision. And if they do decide to do that, in this case, they have our forecasting solutions, our replenishment solutions, our labor solutions, then we would help them move all that information and focus on the critical stores.
And in this case, so it's interesting that you mentioned the solution you're working with Microsoft, right? Is that available to anybody, or is it more targeted to specific clients? We would be happy to share it as well.
Yeah, Luminate Control Tower. It has a use case and a business case in the manufacturing, in the logistics, in third-party logistics, and in retail. So it really allows you to visualize, provide scenario planning, and predict possible disruptions, right? Because the key here, Andre, and the way I generally explain it is, if your plan is to sell 100 units a month, okay, and you're going to sell 25 units every week, and when that time is over, you ask me and you say, well, Antonio, how much did you sell? And I say, I sold 50. Okay. Question everybody has is why, right? And that's not a bad question, but there's even a better question is, when would you have known that you were not going to reach 100? Because once the 4 weeks are over, okay, so if we change our DNA culture and start asking, when could I have known that this was not going to happen? That's what Luminate Control Tower does. It predicts possible future disruptions, so you can take action now to avoid those disruptions.
Interesting. And I know that there is, of course, there is the solution, and then there is the implementation time. And if there is a new client that might benefit from that solution, there is that period of time where everything has to happen, assess their system, trying to figure out how the solution would fit in, or and the implementation takes a while, right? How would you, or is there a solution you came up with during this period? Maybe somebody who is not your current client wants to benefit and needs a better perspective on what's happening in their supply chain, can come in and say, yes, we could help, we need your help. And how long can it take? Shorter than usual? Long? How do you tackle the duration of implementation?
Yeah. Yeah, I think another way of looking at your question is there are things that you can do in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term, right? And definitely the reality is, installing a transportation management solution, installing a warehouse management solution, installing a Luminate Demand Edge, and so forth. Those are projects that on average are going to take 5, 6, 8, 10 months, right? Depending on the complexity and the scope. There are things that can be implemented and have actionable information, have benefits within weeks. Okay. And they generally fall in 3 categories. The first one is what we call quick network design, which is really looking at your assets and looking at, where am I getting the raw material? What are the DCs that are coming into? What are the plants? Inside those plants, how many production lines do I have? And then what are my transportation links? What are my customers? And you model that inside the solution, which we call supply chain strategist. And then you can do scenarios. Well, what, this plant is out of commission. How much can I send to another plant, right? This DC is no longer available, right? Or this DC has capacity. And you can do quick scenario analysis. You can do those as quickly as in 2 weeks, and within 4 or 6 weeks, and you could be making instant decisions on network design, right? Another area which we spoke about previously was inventory optimization. So with IO, which is what we call inventory optimization, you can load and do your segmenting and say, okay, these are my products A, B, and C's. These are my service levels. These are my inventory buffers. I only have so much capacity. How do I increase my service levels? What are the inventories that I need to have in each one of these for this increase in demand, right? So a more intelligent way, we use the previous explanation about a retailer who basically consciously said, we're not going to focus on these categories. Here, it would actually help you identify what those categories are. Keep in mind that some of our retailers have over 100,000 products in their stores, right?
Yes.
So doing it manually is not. And then the third example of that is what we call transportation modeling, for short, TMOD, is really loading your transportation links, right? And your inventory buffers and your physical assets, your DCs, your cross stocks, and so forth. And basically saying, okay, you know what? Based on the demand behavior, next week, this is the capacity of trucks. This is the capacity of shipments that I'm going to need, and be able to provide that visibility to your service, your transportation service providers, or your own fleet, and be prepared for that, right? So again, these 3 examples are things that can be done within 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And as I mentioned before, the other part, a WMS, a TMS, those are months, right?
Yes, correct. I mean, like you said, that's an interesting perspective to have in mind. We should think, okay, what should we do on the short term, in a couple of weeks, then mid-term, and then long-term. What are some of the priorities long-term? So, of course, everybody is firefighting at the moment, right? Trying to put out the disruptions. What do you think, personally, and also from an organization perspective, what do you think organizations should focus on long term? What are some of the, and it can be from a general management perspective, it doesn't have to be only supply chain, financials perspective, human resources. What are your thoughts on the long term priorities here?
Yeah. So I think it's going to accelerate a change that has already been happening. So my view is, if anything, if you look at the last 20, 30 years, there has, we concentrated a lot of the manufacturing in a few countries in Asia, right? Because of cost and efficiencies and, and other reasons, and far away from some of the bigger markets like the US and Europe and so forth, right? But the interesting thing is, if you look at the last 20 years, the cost component is no longer as competitive as it was before. Labor has increased, transportation cost has increased. Lead times have maybe sometimes come down, maybe from 45 days to come down to 30 days. And if you look at the last 10 years, you have seen a lot more nearshoring and even inshoring. So a lot of the manufacturers both in high tech or industrial or automotive, have been putting manufacturing plants closer to the big markets. So the truth is, the manufacturing has diversified slowly in the last 10 years. And some manufacturing has gone to other Asian countries, and some manufacturing have crossed our big oceans and are closer to the markets. So in my opinion, the first long-term effect we're going to see is that we're actually going to see that accelerate a little bit. Right? And these are, let's be clear, these are very significant capital investments, right? So they're not going to move within weeks or months. But as companies look at their supply chain and look at what we learn from what is happening now, they're going to start saying, you know what, we can't just have 60, 80% of our manufacturing based out of one region, right? We're going to have to diversify that, right? So my view is what this is going to do is accelerate that behavior, which was already happening in a slow motion. And then definitely some manufacturers and some retailers are going to change. And going back to what we were talking about, I think a lot of it is going to be based on consumer behavior, right?
Correct. Let's talk about workforce management. I think you also have a solution on that, if I'm not mistaken. But overall, there is quite a big fear, and we see the results in a few industries that we mentioned, that people are going to be left without a job, right? Or we need to rethink our workforce management systems, and we need to rethink how we use our workforce. What is your opinion from this angle? Do you think we have to deploy certain solutions now? Do you think we should rely on a mix of technology, leadership, empathy? Because, when we think about people's professional careers or an emotional topic as well, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah. So let's choose retail, right? So if you look at retail, the top three cost or investments tend to be in real estate, if you're talking about traditional retail, right? Inventory and labor. Right? So labor is a huge component, right, of pretty much any retailer that's brick and mortar and online presence. Right? Workforce management has gone through a very interesting evolution, I guess I'm going to call it, because it has evolved generally the way it was looked at for most companies. It was looked at as, I need to optimize my cost, right? So I don't want to have overtime. I want to provide the right service level, so I want to have enough cashiers. So if you are in a pharmacy business, businesses in most of the world, the peak time is when people return from their work, right? And, interesting trick is if you look at pharmacies, most of the times they tend to be on the right side of the street because they're heading out. So it's between 5 and 7 tends to be the peak time for most pharmacies because they stop by, get their medications or get whatever they're looking for, right? So you need to have, as many cashiers, as many people at that time to optimize service levels. So now what has, in my opinion, changed in the last 3 or 4 years is that a lot of retailers have realized that, and you can see this, some very big retailers like Walmart a couple of years ago announced that they were going to start increasing in a gradual way their wages to employees. And you have other retailers who are also leading in that area. Starbucks has also done an amazing job of making sure their associates are taken well. So workforce management is no longer about cost and service levels, but it's also about the satisfaction of the employee, right? About the flexibility that person has. Because in many retail industries, this might be a part-time job, right? They might have to take care of the children, or they might be studying, or they might have to take care of their parents. So the ability of them to have visibility of what are the hours that I need to work, and can I swap those hours with one of my colleagues because I have an exam in 2 or 3 days, and it's really, it sounds a little cliche, but a happy worker generally tends to be a happy customer. Right?
When you think internally, do you see companies or other leaders doing a great job when it comes to making their employees feel safe from their job perspective? Or even, it's a fine balance that leaders have to think of now. It's between having to protect the financial performance and in the same time making sure their employees feel safe on the long term in their jobs. Do you see some good examples there?
I do, and I have to say personally, this is something that I'm very happy to see across multiple countries in multiple societies, some with more or less degree. But if you go back and look at the news in the U.S. and sometimes in Europe and certainly sometimes here in Asia, it has been corporations who have taken the first steps to protect their associates and their customers before the government. So a couple of key examples. I don't know if you've seen that, Andre, but in my case, I mean, if you look at the U.S., a lot of the sports organizations, they canceled Major League Baseball and basketball and football weeks ago. And that's a huge financial impact for them, right? Because they have to still pay salaries and so forth. And, they said, you know what, we're not going to put our athletes and we're not going to put, in the case of Australia, some of our biggest customers there, they told us 2 or 3 weeks ago, they said, guys, we need to continue working together, but we're no longer going to have face-to-face meetings, right? So we're going to work remote, right? Even before the lockdowns, right? So the message I'm trying to give is, again and again, if you look into the details of a lot of the news we're seeing companies and corporations putting the safety of their employees and putting the safety of their customers before profits, right? And personally, I'm very happy about that. So in the case of Blue Yonder, we made a decision several weeks ago to stop all international travel, right? So, and we made a decision a couple of weeks ago also that, everybody had to work from home. I have to say, our customers have been amazingly supportive. So we have over 50 ongoing projects with customers in the region. Every single of those projects has continued in a remote fashion. And the customers have not only supported this joint decisions and sometimes, or our decision and sometimes, but they've actually welcomed that decision to do that.
50 projects. Like you said, it's interesting to see how people change their mindset from feeling a flight and a face-to-face meeting is mandatory to feeling Zoom can also do the trick, or other conference platforms as well. And when we think about hiring, or in this period, not a lot of organizations make it a huge priorities, but some still do. Hiring is a topic of interest for us because, of course, this is our core product, the executive search part. What are the biggest changes that you see, first of all, and second, what are the most demanded skills during this coming few months that you see as a leader?
Yeah. So my sense, first of all, is I think most companies realize that at the end of the day, that intellectual property, that expertise resides in the team, right? So they will be impacts, and again, it would vary from industries to industries. Airlines and hotels and so forth. I think, unfortunately, there's going to be severe impacts for the workforce in those segments, right? I think most technology companies, I think a lot of the manufacturing companies, certainly retailers on the grocery hypermarket area, I think you're going to see actually a huge effort of trying to recruit some additional people, right? My sense from the point of view of skill sets and the point of view of what people are going to be looking for, at the end of the day, yes, absolutely, certain specific knowledge. Again, we spoke a little bit earlier. If there's one thing that has come out of this is supply chain management is now in center stage. So understand that people with machine learning, artificial intelligence, data analytics, those type of things were already scarce. They're going to become even scarcer, right? And I also think, to a very big extent, people who have that ability to focus and work in critical situations, right? So I think as a company, as Blue Yonder, and I think as corporations, and again, I mentioned this before, I really do see companies putting their associates and their customers foremost as a priority, right? But I think safety is important, and we need to be focusing on that. But it's also about creating a sense of purpose, and that we do. So in our case, and specifically in Asia Pacific for Blue Yonder, what we're doing and how we're helping certain customers, it matters. And it matters significantly because, as you mentioned before, having a retailer who is providing 50% of the food and beverage for that country, making sure that supply chain is seamless, has redundancy, and is working without any interruptions is absolutely critical.
Yes, like you mentioned, we are living through times when safety and purpose comes as high priorities, and we are getting close to the last question now, Antonio. What should we expect in the next few months, and how should we prepare, or how should the supply chain professionals across the board, because this is most of our audience, it's logistics supply chain professionals, how should they prepare to take the challenges that will come now, in a few weeks, in a few months, maybe even 1 year?
Yeah. So I'll share what I've been doing. I've been focused in this industry for pretty much 20 years now. And I've been lucky enough to, be in a lot of detail when it comes to our transportation management solutions, some of our forecasting solutions. I've done consulting work. I've done sales, alliances, product development. So I was part of product development. But at the end of the day, what I've been, since we made the decision to work from home and cancel all international travel, I find myself, if we can use one of the silver linings or benefits of doing this, is that actually you find yourself with more time, right? So this week alone, I went with some of my colleagues into a refresher of a lot of our technology offerings in reference to integration and other things. So, how you invest that time, I think it's important. I've decided personally that, I'm going to go out there and list internally and externally up my skills, right? So I am finishing a Six Sigma Lean class, right? That I think is very relevant to the things. I went through a detailed Luminate Control Tower technology integration overview yesterday with some of our team members. And by the way, it's not just me, but we're doing this as a company. We said, you know what, it's a good time to up our skills. So my message to supply chain professionals is, take advantage of, if you do have downtime, not everybody has downtime. Some people are in that execution mode that we talked about a little while ago, is look at those opportunities you have, depending on what are your strengths and weaknesses, and work on creating and bridging those gaps so that you're better prepared. Because as I said before, supply chain management is going to be in main stage, and it will be in main stage for some time to come.
That's right. Antonio, thank you very much for the sharing. We are close to finishing now, but like you said, supply chain is coming at the center stage. It should have been for a long time, but now because it's needed, everybody's focused on it. And I think both technology, empathy, putting clients and employees first is very important. As you mentioned, if we can also use this time to better prepare or better our skills, is even better. So again, thank you for being with us, and hope for the best for the next few months.
Andre, thank you very much for having me, and same here. I think we are seeing positive signs, and I have no doubt that this will pass. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to go to www.elcotglobal.com and click the podcast button for all the show notes of the interview. Also subscribe to our mailing list to get our latest updates first. If you're listening through a streaming platform like iTunes, Spotify or Stitcher, we would appreciate a kind review. 5-star works best to keep us going and our production team happy. And of course, share it with your friends. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so do feel free to follow me. And if you have any suggestions on what to do and who to invite next, don't hesitate to drop me a note. And if you're looking to hire top executives in supply chain or transform your business, of course, contact us as well to find out how we can help.